morning to you. How are you doing? Everything is good? Where you are, I hope it is. A big thank you to Sam Gituku for another stellar performance, as always, in the morning. Very critical issues, by the way, being discussed. As you saw yesterday, today I've listened to, on the way, I've listened to most of the radio station, read most of the papers. Kila mtu anaongea mambo ya what happened yesterday. I think, over and above that, and you're just talking to CJ, the most important thing to do is there is always the right to picket. The only problem that is there is destruction of property. That one we should all agree, because at the end of the day, those things we're destroying ni sisi wenyewe ndio tunafaa kutumia. So let's at least agree on that base, that there is freedom, ndio, picket, do the thing, but tafadhali, let's appeal to all Kenyans. Iwe mtu mwenye sasa amebeba Tomboya Street, for example, sasa watu watapotea. Google Maps ikisema turn left to Tomboya Street, hauioni, sasa inasaidia nani? Anyway, it's not a laughing matter, but it was funny, but still doesn't need to be done. Anyway, that is beside the point. Let's talk about today. We have Roberta Bobby. What's going on? Are you okay?
Nimecheka tangu niingie building.
Yes.
I'm just happy.
You're just happy?
And you're so funny.
Thank you very much. Asante sana.
Niko salama. I really appreciate that it rained.
Yes, it did. Yes. It rained actually pretty much the whole night.
Yeah.
At least in Nairobi.
Ili enhance your sleep.
Yes.
Yeah, so nimelala. Jana
nimelala fiti.
Mapema sana. Leo nimeamka really fresh. I feel good. I'm happy. You
know, having experience, I still don't get why they say, Ati, I slept like a baby. Those people rarely sleep. So I don't know where that expression came from. It's rare.
I sleep like a 30-year-old.
Yeah. But
more accurate.
Yeah, because babies, maze, wanatuamsha kila saa. CJ.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good. What part of Nairobi was the rain falling on?
So this was so areas of Kiambu Road. Nilisikia Nico Dhiambo leo akiongea, so Masaku areas yo Kimau. Jeff Koinange also said in Kitisuru it was raining quite heavily, he said. Yes, and at least hapa Kilimani pia niliona. Hata ukipita pale Nyayo kulikuwa bado na some wet.
All right.
Well, okay, look where you are. It wasn't raining.
No, it didn't rain.
You pray, you know. Yeah, come on now. Let's not make it spiritual, but you need you an Elijah to hear the sound of abundance of rain. But it's all good. I hope wherever you are, at least kulikuwa na kunyesha meteorological. Walikuwa wametuambia tutanyesha over and above, of course, the prayers that were made. All right, today we want to talk about, well, we often talk about sensitive topics, but this is also a little bit sensitive because it has, it requires you to really think through it, unless, of course, maybe you are currently going through it. But it requires you to think through it and go past the relationship and see even if it's affecting your current relationship. We want to talk about toxicity, but most importantly, toxic parents or toxic parents, toxic parenting. And we want to, we've seen examples, those conversations have been online for the past 2 weeks, but we won't get into that, of course, because you don't know the truth of it all. It's accusations and counter-accusations, but it brought to the fore that sort of discussion. So I guess we'll begin by, how do you know, first of all, that what is being toxic? What is it to have a toxic parent? Bobby, what do you think?
I think somewhere where I notice toxicity starting between parents and children is whereby the parents fail to, ni kama wanashindwa distinguish that a child is not an extension of them or is not a them part too. So they start to treat their child like it's their property or something they own. And this doesn't come out of hate necessarily. It's just because of learned habits and conditioning and how you grew up within your household. This is, say, the parent. So when they have kids, mostly they just endeleza how they were brought up unless they choose to unlearn the things that they went through. So what happens is, parent akishindwa kuji-separate from their offspring, they start to feel like they have to make every decision for their kid. because ultimately, you know, the parents believe they know best. So wanashindwa kukuwa na hiyo separation ya uni mtoi wangu, lakini yeye ni individual, ako na mind yake, ako na interests zake, anaweza kuwa na beliefs zake, anaweza kuwa na ideas zake na decisions zake. And that's why I normally say, I think it's really important before you decide to go the parenthood journey, is that you ask yourself, are you able to understand that this kid is one day going to be an individual or an adult with their own decisions, with their own mind, with their own thinking, their own things going on? Are you going to be able to love them despite who they end up becoming, especially if it's far off from who you are and the ideas you have for your family and the decisions you've been making for them all throughout their lives? So I'd say a toxic parent is a parent who's able to make that great distinguish between them and their offspring. They're not able to understand that this is a whole different person who has their own thing going on. Because in a stem from upper, because once they believe that this is my kid, this is mine, this is something I own, wanakwanga so unable to understand many things. That's why if you do not follow in their beliefs, you can get chased out. If you do not make decisions like them, you're different, so you get closed out. Ama you get punished for being who you are, for the beliefs you have, for the things for the decisions you can make for yourself. So, I mean, toxicity doesn't necessarily develop from hate and I don't like my kids or I want to destroy my kids' lives. Sometimes it's out of maybe, you know, if you ask the parents this question, what they'll say is, but I loved my kid. I always wanted to do the best for them. I always made the decisions that were better for them. But when you think about it and if you involve the kids in the discussion, you start to realize that these decisions being made by the parents were never for the kid or for the family, or it was just out of their own selfish reasons because they were not able to have discourse or learn about being a parent or talk to their kids about what it is they like or what it is they want, because they do not create that space for there to be a conversation or for them to get to know their children and things like that. So I'd say that is where I see toxicity coming about between parents and kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, there is also the whole conversation about, I don't know if you call it a conversation or an excuse, about how they were raised. I was having a conversation with somebody and actually we thought about it and we were like, most of our parents were probably raised by parents who are weaning off colonialism. So that is the kind of environment they were in. But before you go about like probably what the genesis of their toxicity is, CJ, in your view, what is that environment like for a child or who's watching? And by child, I mean you could be 8, you could be 48. But to know that, I think there's some toxicity here.
Well, you know, it's very difficult sometimes to make these definitions because unless you're dealing with extreme cases where somebody's outrightly poisonous or malignant, sometimes it's very difficult to tell whether this person was actually being toxic. See, I'm listening to Roberta, and I am in the between of the generations. Okay. Like, if Roberta talked about parents, she'll probably be talking about people who are not too far from my generation. Right. And then they're the older generation, of course, of parents as well. And I think that most of the parents, when they look at this, there's also the element of responsibility that you're trying to guide. But how will this child interpret that element of guidance? And that's why I talked about unless it is those elements of extremity. For example, you have a child and at Form 2 or something, they decide school is not what I want to do. Are they very aware of the consequences of that decision? Is it based on who they are or what they see at that particular point? Have they lived long enough to have a broad perspective of all the decisions that they have? How does it end up for somebody who goes that direction? What choices do they make? So at that particular point, as a parent may be forced to say, you've got to go to school. And it may have nothing to do with what the parent wants for themselves, because some of those parents would be fine. Even if they retired, they have enough. But they're feeling like this decision that you're going to make, 10 years, 20 years down the line, you may not like this particular decision. And that may draw a rift. So I feel part of this is in the definitions of what toxicity is, what responsibility is to the parent. A parent may be feeling, I'm actually being responsible. I want this child to be able to live life well without me or after I am gone. The child looks at it and says, you are imposing on me your decisions and what you want. So it's a very difficult place to come into, unless now, again, I get back to that, unless there are those elements of extremities. Because as a parent, for example, I've talked about this here before, I've had a discussion with one of my sons who is really into football. But then I had to negotiate with him and say, look, you also need education. And I had to make him meet with even people who have played football professionally and got injuries, and told him, look, I needed to go back to school so that he doesn't think that I am trying to impose the school thing on him, because the truth is people get hurt, and even when they don't, somewhere along the line you'll get to 40 and you'll stop playing at some point. Then what do you do?
Getting to 40 is for a select few.
Yeah, for very few. So this is something with a very short span, and then the chances of success, the probability is also very, very low, because it's very competitive across the globe. Millions and millions and millions of boys are playing football. So what is the probability of you succeeding at it? And that, so you've got to have a backup plan. So I think that what usually happens is the divergence in views, and when both sides have hard stance, then that relationship is going to go into a meltdown. And that is where now people will begin to talk about toxicity, because the parent will feel, I know better than you. I've been here longer. And the kid will be like, this is my life. You lived your life in those days. These are not the 60s. This is 2023. And that then, that meltdown produces other things, including rebellion. So you'll find a kid then saying, then I want to do everything that my parent does not believe in, just to show that they're protesting, like the guys yesterday. They declare their own March 20th in their house, you know, just to hurt their parents as well. But if you look at the basis of most of these things, there is love and fear mixed up. It's a concoction of love and fear. People who love each other deeply, and then they have very deep fears as well, and then they do not know how to balance between their love and their fear.
How to communicate.
Yeah.
To communicate it as well. Well, we want to ask a question here, and just, you know, what are your views on toxic parenting? If you have, you can SMS us on 2242. What are your views on toxic parents? Hashtag Daybreak SMS 2242. Just by talking about this, one day we'll have to talk about toxic children. So the parents might...
Children are toxic.
Not feel. But anyway, for today, what are your views on toxic parents or toxic parenting? And so you can, okay, hold up, I forgot to put my phone on silent. Right, so my other phone. Yeah, so what are your views on toxic parents or toxic parenting? That is what we want you to tell us about. It's 2242. Remember, like I always say, on 2242, you can be anonymous. You don't have to leave your name. We'll just read out your message. But if you feel you want to do, you can leave your name and at least tell us where you're watching from. We'll appreciate that. And also the hashtag to use is Daybreak. So what is your view on toxic parents? The other thing is that Roberta and CJ has mentioned it a little bit, love and fear. So you'd find that the parent probably loves this child and has a lot of fear. For example, and it happens mostly sometimes probably when you're just about to get married and your parents can't articulate the fact that we are afraid you're going. We can't believe this. Unatuacha. So they fight you in different ways, or it comes out as a fight. And then people label that, this is some toxicity. So how is that part of a problem? Does that make you, as a parent, toxic? The fact that you are unable to communicate your feelings, maybe because of the way you were brought up in terms of tunakufa kisisi, hakuna kuongea, or how does that work?
Definitely. And something I'm starting to see is that if you as a parent work on yourself and you become very secure in your emotions and you become very articulate in your communication, then it becomes easier because you don't have kids who need, who you have to compromise on big things like school and football. Like you've already bred them in a way that they already know what's important for them. They already know, they already understand. They might reach a place where they're not really able to make a decision, but because you're secure as a parent, your advice is able to show them better that, you know, if you do this, you can do this, and you can do them at the same time, or you can do this one after this. It's all okay because yourself, you're not imposing your fears and things that held you back onto your kid. And that's something that's it happens very easily when you love someone. It's as simple as your boyfriend going to work in the morning. Kuna hiyo fear ya, oh my God, you know, anything can happen throughout the day. Is he going to be okay? Will he come back in the evening? I try to, even Jana, my mom was really calling me because I live not so far from Kibra. So my mom kept calling me, are you okay? Utafikaje home? Utaendana, nikukujie, nitume gari, nifanye. But I get that fear. But and it's not something I can tell her, just work on it. You know, there's protests and wherever I am, I'm going
to... TV.
Yeah, it's not something I can just tell her to work on, but with my reassurance and my amazing communication and, you know, just giving her the reassurance she needs. And with her being able to have a secure attachment style, she knows if Bobby says she's fine, she's going to get home okay. If she keeps calling me and letting me know where she is, so it's a give and take relationship. The parent has to be very secure in themselves. They have to have secure attachment styles as well. I imagine even, I can remember the first time I ever went to town alone. I was really young, maybe 12 or 11 or, hizo siku ilikuwa a bit easier, ungetrust mtoto wako ende tao, sika siku hizi. And I remember the fear my mom had. She was like, umepanda matatu correct? Utafika vizuri. So I'm trying to imagine the fear is the same throughout, whether you're 50 or 13 or 2 years old, your parent goes on having that mixture of fear and love.
Right.
But then it is their responsibility to try and be as secure in their own emotions as they can, so that they make sure they do not pass on these fears that they have within themselves onto their offspring, because it's very easy, because if you're around that environment where that's how people deal with their emotions, it could be as simple as, okay, mama, I'm going to call you and let you know how I'm going to get home so that you feel very safe.
And when I get home?
And when I get home, I'll video call you so that you know you're sure I'm in the house. You know, and it's just like her being able to say, yo, I'm really worried. I don't feel safe you being in that area. Can we find another alternative? It's just communication. So that I understand, oh, kumbe nikiongea tu na mamangu anaweza kuni understand. And this is a relationship we didn't always have. We had to, like, both of us had to work on it. You'd think that somebody being your parent or you being the parent of someone and them being your kid, it's automatic that you guys will be friends and you'll just talk. It takes a lot of work. You have to feel very secure in each other and within yourselves. You have to have very clear communication. And they have to actively, the same way Sisi as the kids were working on ourselves, they have to work on themselves as well so that they can be able to manage, understand, and communicate their emotions. Because emotional intelligence, it's not just for a certain type of people, it's for everyone. And where it starts to get toxic is whereby, Sisa, what I was trying to explain in my first point is whereby the parent fails to be able to separate themselves from their offspring. Right. So they start to think whatever decision they make is very final. Sometimes your 13-year-old could question your thinking. And it's not for you to say, no, I'm daddy, I said. No, you think about it. Yeah, sit down and say, yo, this kid has valid questions. Like, how do I let him know that enyewe kuna, I know it's a 1 in a million chance, but enyewe kuna probability anaweza kuwa the best football star in the world? How can I relay this information? How can I make him feel very secure while still showing him that you know, there's also the flip side. There's also the other side to things. This can totally happen, and my cushioning is as far as this. Lakini sasa sale siko ama sa zile siezi utawezaje kumake decisions after mimi nimeenda. And I think I say that the point for being able to separate yourself from your kid, because it's not something that happens intentionally. Si ati mtu akiona ball ana decidingi uni mtoi wangu na stay acha kitu. Like I'm sure when you're having a baby, you think about them coming into this earth and anything could happen, their life could go anyway. But you try to be a role model in the way that you guide them. You try to shelter them in the way that you can. And this has to come from you yourself, Pierre, as a parent working on yourself. Work on yourself so that you're so secure that you're able to be, Shazmin always says this saying that sometimes working on things and working on your... I went to Tupac.
Shazmin. Anyway, go on. Say whatever point we'll address Shazmin.
Sometimes working on you think working on yourself and working on your own things, unafikiria ni yako tu peke yake, but it always has a ripple effect. If I have a secure attachment style and I hang around Willis and CJ, I'll start to see it trickle down on them. Maybe Willis alikuanga pia yeye scared. Hey, Bobby, make sure many call. But you start to see he's relaxed. Why? Because I can provide the reassurance. I can always communicate if he needs it. And him as my friend, he's able to say, yo, are you safe wherever you are? Let me know. It's just a communication thing and a secure thing. Everyone has to work on their own attachment style so that even as a parent, you do not bring about the toxicity of where you try to be controlling rather than compromising and understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for those, CJ, who probably, because as a parent, you have gone through and are going through probably different things. And probably it was, you'd hear some parents say, sisi hatukuwa tunafanya hiyo. Or this is just not the way we were brought up, for example. But then how do you as a child not, something that, Ivy always says, don't transfer your trauma to your child.
See, again, Willis, we get back to the definitions.
Right.
Because what you would pass on as family culture or traditions may be interpreted as trauma. I don't think that those parents were thinking in that sense that they wanted to pass on even their pain, including mothers who had to raise children by themselves or fathers who had to raise children by themselves, probably because of broken relationships, and they became overprotective. They were trying to keep these children from their experiences. I don't think many of them were even trying to get these kids to go through what they were going through. In fact, it would be the other side of the pendulum, where somebody feels like, I don't want this kid to go through the pain I went through. I don't want them to go through the kind of marriage that I had. So I'm going to send them to school until they get a good job and they're able to stand on their feet and all of that. They mostly would move from one side to the other, one extreme to the other. But then again, now it comes back to interpretations. So as you're growing up and you're looking back at all of these things, you feel this person was trying to cage me and determine the direction I was going to go, but not realizing they were in a particular space as well. I tell you, nothing changes you like parenting. You feel totally responsible for a life that is absolutely very vulnerable. And you cannot wake up one time and decide, okay, that one is an adult, because you're used to this person depending on you for decisions, for their protection, for their provision. And even as they grow, that thing never leaves. When I show up at my grandmother's house, as old as I am, she still knows that's a kid.
Baby.
It has never changed, That's still a kid. When I lost my mother, my grandmother was saying, now she's gone and left these young kids here. And in my family, I'm the youngest, so you can imagine how old are the rest. But to her, you'll always be that kid, So because this person has been your responsibility for so long, that there's no time the alarm will tick in your heart and say, okay, now you're okay.
Yeah.
And that is what makes the separation very difficult.
Right.
That's what makes separation very difficult. I mean, the process of separating Siamese twins is very delicate. And we don't understand that when you have a child or you have a parent, you're nearly as connected in your soul and your spirit. So the process of separation must be handled so well. Otherwise, you are going to lose one or the other, or both of them. That thing, they're conjoined in their soul. And for a mother, it is even worse because you've shared everything for 9 months within, bonded completely. So by the time this separation is going to come, where this child begins to grow and say, I want to make my own decisions, I want my own space, I want to have my own belief system, I want to do what I want to do, it's not easy on the other side. And so the reaction of that separation, all the fears it will bring, all the disappointment, all the pain, the heartbreak that it will bring on the other side may result in a toxic, or what we would call a toxic reaction. We have to also understand that there are various spaces within that toxicity is shown. There are people who generally, you will feel this person generally was toxic. But there are those who would have shown toxicity at some point, which is something that happens with human beings when they get into spaces of collision, that at some point you may act toxic, and it doesn't mean you are toxic. You probably were going through stress.
Very reactional.
Yeah, it is very reactional. So at that point, you've broken up with this person, you're coming for all the stuff you brought down. Because you're just angry.
Yeah. But
You're just angry at that time.
Right.
It doesn't mean that is who you are. After 2 days, you cool down and you don't know how to tell them, okay, come
back to the stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Or, people blocking each other, so they're not talking to each other for 3 days or 4 days, and then peeping on social media to see the person.
Hey, what's going on?
These are all
Hey.
these are all traits of toxicity.
Yeah.
But does it mean the person is toxic? No. It is a reaction at that particular point that depends on their emotional state, their mental state, sometimes even their financial state. Financial pressure would put somebody in a place where they're acting somehow.
Right.
So I think that what we have to learn how to manage, even as parents, is the separation process, where this person begins to grow into their identity. On the other hand, today I am for the parents, man. Raising kids is not easy. You look back, Willis, I tell you, there are many times I've sat and looked back and asked myself, how did my mom survive with me? Leave alone my brother, me.
Yes.
As in, I wonder, how did she do that?
Right.
Because I think I caused enough chaos.
Right.
And I'm thinking, man, that wasn't easy.
Right.
Because I looked at when my boys getting into high school and things like that, the fears that I had when they get exposed to certain kind of people, environments and stuff, and you're just thinking, man, I don't want you to do the stuff that I did. I don't want you to lose the opportunities that I lost or make the mistakes that I made. And I'm just thinking, so how did she do that? Here I am as a man and so worried, and I'm thinking, but she was raising us by herself most generally because my father was working elsewhere. I'm thinking, how did she make that? I think sometimes it takes you to be a parent to understand what your parent was going through. So if at that time their relationship was not working, or their finances were low, or they had pressure from everywhere else, and then they also have these children here, probably what they were releasing was the pressures from every side because they did not know how to handle it. Right. And the fear and the hope, fear against what would go wrong and the hope that this child will become different would play out as toxicity.
Right. And so how do you then, because as a child, you might not be privy to all this information. This is Leo, this month has been tight. Yeah. Because again, also parents will try to insulate, right?
Yes.
So you might not know. But then how do you as a child, because, now, again, like she says, when I catch you, I'm like, all right, man, this is just 2 years in. Woo, I got
Lifetime to go.
Lifetime to go.
Yeah.
But then how do you, as a child then, probably maybe now older, or even if somebody's watching, I don't know if they're still home, and how do you try to understand this, that this opposition is coming from a good place? My brother has my brother has something he always tells me sometimes. He says, take the message Not the packaging. Not how it came.
Chore.
Unaona ukipata box.
Yeah.
The gift iko huko ndani. We angalia what is the actual message. You know, take the message and see the vehicle in which it came in, right? So sorry. So then how do you do that? How do you do that because at one point I believe we are toxic to each other.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of offer interesting to say, a safe space for our parents?
Yeah. Actually, I love how CJ is coming from a parent's perspective.
Right.
How he's explaining things to me that I probably would not have understood 2 years ago. If you say ningekuwa like, what do you? I don't care.
And there are probably people watching who are like, hapana, where ujui mama yangu?
Yeah, like where ujui zile vitu anasema. But if you've gone through toxic or abuse in the home, and then you finally start to heal from it, you're able to kind of see both sides of like you're able to see, okay, yeah, kuna hiyo part yenye mama alikuwa na come from, alikuwa na go through things, life ilikuwa crazy, and she still had to show up for us, and she did. She showed up in every way. She was always there. Even when she was the only one or she had nothing. And as a kid, of course, you're not privy to this kind of information. You don't understand.
Right.
And what I'm going to say as someone who I feel like I mean, I'm not a parent, so I cannot speak from CJ's perspective. I get it, but I cannot say I understand it in its entirety.
Right.
Because I feel like we can't have excuses anymore. This is 2023. Let's just be aware. Unless uko ushago pahali in the bundus, haujui anything, hauna anything, you have your own, you're like...
Please, let's not disrespect the people in the village.
No, I mean just that they cannot, maybe they cannot access this kind of information.
Right.
Right now, please let's be intentional about even how we raise our kids. There's nothing that's easy. Everything is difficult from the first time, and I cannot compare being a parent to anything. I do not have that experience, so I can't start to say, oh, it's like starting a new job. I can only liken it to something. But what I'd say is relationships are very fixable. At any point, after 30 years, after 50 years, you just have to be intentional about, this is what I want. I miss my daughter. Let me reach out. I miss my son. I messed up. Take accountability. There's this lady who was giving an interview, and she was talking about some other lady who made a video. It was a lady in her 60s. The first video is a lady in her 60s saying she has about 4 kids, and none of her kids talk to her. Kila mtu alihama home, akaishia kamwacha. She wants to start discussing her retirement and, how ataishi for the rest of her life. None of her kids want to talk to her. And she was just crying online saying, I don't understand. I feel like I did my best. I raised them to the best of my ability. And these kids came out and they were saying, you were very, very toxic throughout our whole life. Like you were always on drugs. You were never there. You never showed up for us. We never had anything. You were abusive. You were emotionally negligent. But this parent does not see the kid's point of view. Yanaona tu, hata kaa alikuwa anavuta figi yake kando, alikuwa ameenda job akatafuta do akaleta watu iweze kudishi. That was her best. That was the best she could do. But this is how love languages come about. You can't love people in the way you feel love. You can't, siwezi kudecide love yako ni viatu. Maybe love yako ni jackets. Maybe unapenda jackets. Siwezi anza kukubaya all types of shoes. Alafu niseme, I did my best.
Lakini mimi ninunulie viatu. Viatu ni shida kwangu. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
right, go ahead.
But you get what I mean.
Yes,
like I can't give that excuse of,
right.
The best I could do was shoes. No, I need to listen to you, to talk to you. You're my child. I need to know you in that way. And if we truly have that soul-to-soul connection, I need to have the patience. And I understand, kuna factors zingine external. Kuna watu wana go through drug addiction. Kuna watu wana go through financial issues. Kuna watu wana... But I'm saying, if we're to be parents and we're to be very, very intentional about bringing kids into this earth, let's be mindful of how we guide them. Let's not... I mean, yes, it could be the best you've done, but sometimes your kid doesn't even need to know their school fees is paid. They just needed mommy home for 1 hour. That's all they needed. On Saturday, they just wanted to play with you. you could do that, you create a core memory for them, and it's something they remember well into their 60s. So that video about your mama alikuwa anateta that the kids wamemwabandon, watoi wakasema hivyo. So another lady came up and was just talking about that same video, and she's saying basically what I'm saying right now is, you need to be very mindful and stop coming from a place of, but si nilifanya, but si nilitry my, but si. You could have loved them in your own way, but if they did not understand the love you were trying to show, if they did not feel like you were present, if your kids are not able to understand, then maybe you also had a problem with communication. Maybe you didn't bring them up in a way that they became kids who are able to be kind and compassionate and see, you know, this is what mommy did. This is how we meet each other halfway. This is how I listen better. This is how I become a good kid when mom is struggling to meet our needs and, you know, do all these things for us. So I'd say that, yes, we can say, you can say you did your best, but please be a bit more intentional. Please listen to your kids' needs. Listen to them, because this is something I'm doing with my mom now. This is not something I grew up doing with her. But right now we have such a beautiful relationship where I could say it could be something as simple as an outfit. Maybe hapendi venye nimevaa, maybe nguo yangu iko revealing. Na mimi akiniambia ndakwa like hivi ndo venye si tunavaanga, hizi ndo nguo si tunavaa na hivi ndo zinakaa cool. But I started to see her advice is not coming from I look bad. It's coming from people will be looking at you weird. Maybe there's people who start talking bad about you. She's just trying to protect me from the things she feels. I don't want my kid going through these things. And it took so much for me to understand. Kitambo nilikuwa nadhani yeye ni mtiaji. Sasa naelewa, we could be going somewhere.
Would you think, sorry to cut you,
sorry.
Do you think it would have been better if that was the communication?
Yes.
Like instead of saying,
yes.
Survival.
Yes.
Survival kwa sababu nadhani ABCD will have.
Yes. If she were able to have brought me up in a way that I understood these were her fears and we can compromise, tunaweza skizana tuone, okay, how can I sawa ndava jacket juu ama wacha nitoi dress juu, how we like. If there's a way that she were able to do that, then I would have understood better. But now I do. Now I understand. And it's prompting her to communicate better. So instead of her being like, usivai hiyo, she takes the route for, unajua, maybe it's not safe, maybe it'll get cold. And then I'm able to listen better because already her communication is meeting my standards of the kind of relationship I require with her. So let's not give excuses. This goes for all sorts of relationships.
Right.
Hata mi siwezi sema tu ati mamangu alikuwa mkali so pia mimi siwezi sema hivyo. Ni saizi in this moment I need a healthy relationship with my mom, so I'm working towards it. Okay. I'm not giving excuses. I'm not justifying why I would be horrible to her. I've just decided that I love her and I want to make it better. So even parents right now, I was saying it's never too late. Whether you're 70, whether you're 23, answer your communication. Na unaweza shelter mtoi wako bado ukitry kumuonesha that hizi ndo fears zenye uko nazo so that you guys are able to understand each other better. I mean, I cannot speak from a parent's point of view. I keep giving that disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, because I can't say it's easy peasy, it's this. I'm also just listening.
Yeah.
But I feel like communication should just go across board.
Right.
Yeah.
We're learning. CJ, we are taking notes.
I love how Roberta brings up this, that maybe if we communicate better. But I think Africans mostly communicate through parables, not very straight. So if somebody will find a way to communicate without necessarily speaking directly and expressly. And so when you're dealing with the older people as well, they had two ways. Either you will speak through a parable or you will just issue a decree. And the person that you're speaking to is supposed to understand that you have given thought to it. I think the burden would be on both sides. By the time somebody's telling you, don't go there, generally the default setting is to say, this one that they've told me not to go there, let me go.
That's where I want to go.
But then what about sitting back and asking, why are they saying that? What details are they not giving me? because sometimes it is somebody has actually gone that direction. You know, when I talk to people about some of the things I did in my teenage, they don't believe it, Willis. They totally don't believe that. They don't.
Try
and so I'm not telling you nothing. That you've got to pay me. You have to pay me like Netflix paid Chris Rock. That's gonna be. So you know. So sometimes when I meet people and I will talk about some things and they feel you're talking from this particular space. Right. You don't understand what happens here. Yeah. But what would not be clear to them is actually I'm talking from this space because I've been there, done that, done everything, and got myself a T-shirt, you know. Right. I remember one time we were having this conversation around here, and once when I was talking to Shatter about reggae music, and he was so surprised. It must have been on the group. Right. And he was very surprised at the knowledge that I had about that. So sometimes people will look at their parents and think they were never young at any one point. They feel, you know, you think your parent just woke up at 55 or 60. I mean, how did you even come here? Right. They had a girlfriend or boyfriend.
Yes, that's right.
That's why you were conceived. So the assumption that parents don't know also robs children of the opportunity to get some guidance. And of course, there are parents who will do it bad. And I agree that we've got to do better. Like I would have those discussions. My mother would not have those discussions. She was a teacher. Right. You would go to school unless you were dead on a stretcher. You would go to school. Right. You'd say you have a fever, you'll go to school. Didn't matter anything else, you'd go to school. And her thinking was, her philosophy was, education is the inheritance that I'm giving to you. I look back now, and I see the sense in it. Because not everybody grew up with things to be given. Not every one of us. I know you're looking at me and wondering, how can that be?
What do you mean?
Not everybody grew up with that. Right. So she felt this is still the best way.
That's right.
For you, get out there, you'll fend for yourself, you will be equipped, you will be skilled enough, and you'd get out. I see that now. I didn't see that then. There's a lot of decisions that I would see her make, and I would be thinking, why is she doing this? Why isn't she doing what other parents are doing? Why are we not being allowed to do what other parents are allowing their children to do? I look back now and I see the wisdom in it. Problem was they would never communicate everything about it. So somebody will just tell you, Willis, don't do this, or you can't do this. So you remain in the space of being curious and wanting to find out, why are they telling me not to do this? Now, if you go on a different trajectory, you will feel like you need to become rebellious. Right. And try that. Yeah. If you ask most of the parents of my generation today, they're closer to their parents. They are closer. When they started seeing them kids acting like them,
they're like, oh.
So they had to go and seek, to seek their parents' advice on how to handle. Yeah.
All right. Well, I tell you what, let's take a look at some feedback of what you're saying on the SMSs. They impose, this is your question about what your thoughts are about toxic kids. They impose fear to kids. Kids see them as a burden, leading them to make their own decisions parallel to their parents' feelings. This is Anne from Meru. Annie, children should understand that they are connected with their parents and they are caring for them. All right? I'm 25 years, female firstborn. I really got tired of responsibilities at home and decided to move out. Now, my parents are on my neck saying I shouldn't leave home, that I'm too young to move out. I can't go back home because everything will go back to normal. That is me doing all the chores, including being a parent to my siblings, when their actual parents, Wakotu, are just there. Watching from 020 or 020, my parents refuse to allow me to go for work, and yet I'm out of school waiting to go to college. Are they toxic really, because they never accept my decisions at all? All right. Children of toxic parents often struggle with feelings of guilt, shame, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming healthy relationships. They may also develop maladaptive coping mechanisms such as substance abuse, self-harm, or eating disorders. Why does this look like it was picked out of Google? But all right, thank you. Toxicity comes especially at the age of 25 and above. But as long as you're still below, your thinking has not matured enough to make mature decisions. Remember, your parent passed through the age, as you're saying, and they know the pumps available at that
Probably
stage.
bumps.
Bumps, or the pumps, right. Simon Sawe from Eldoret. Toxic parents may use emotional manipulation, verbal insults, or belittling comments to control their children. Raymond Silali, it is important to recognize that your parent is exhibiting toxic behavior so that you can take steps to protect yourself and further harm, and probably also communicate to them. Crispinas Adams, a parent becomes toxic when he or she uses fear, guilt, humiliation as tools to get what they want and ensure compliance from their children. However, when they guide their children with love and use strict guidelines but accommodative in listening to their views, the process eliminates the toxicity. Let's begin with the lady who says she's the firstborn, she's 25, she moved out. Sasa wazazi wanasema no, you should move back in, but she's afraid if she goes in, she'll now become the parents to her siblings and keep on doing all the house chores. Na the parents wako tu. What would you say to them?
Well, I understand where she's coming from, that she'd want to begin living her life,
right,
and her dreams. And, independence is a very strong attribute to have if you're going to grow emotionally, spiritually, financially, in every way. What she is not telling us is also the state of her family. Sometimes, Willis, sometimes it is not because the parents are being controlling. Sometimes there are situations where, okay, you'll move out. I'm just using a hypothetical case. You move out and probably your parents are struggling to take your siblings to school. How cool is that? Like your sibling may be home and you say, I don't want to be a parent to my sibling. I think sometimes it's just an element of responsibility, of just checking out, is this a genuine case or they're trying to abuse me? If they're using you as, I'm trying to avoid that word, but if you're being used more like an investment or something where the parents are abdicating their duties where they're capable, that's a very different scenario. But I think we all have been beneficiaries of extended relationships in our families in a way or the other, that we had to be supportive. You would be sent to an uncle, not those ones on Twitter and everywhere. You'd be living with a cousin, or a brother chipped in here or there. Somehow, we all have been beneficiaries of people who are not necessarily our parents. So you have to weigh the situation and ask yourself, is it a genuine situation that there is? What if they're dealing with something else? Like even when they were taking you to school, they took up all the loans, so they're really struggling. And then one of your siblings needs to go to school and nobody's asking you to pay the whole bill, but just to chip in a bit. Then as this person gets better, then you move out. I think some of those things are situational, where you can make the decision based on the situation at that particular point. You could be wanting to move home and out of home, and then you have a parent who is unwell, incapacitated, and they're on a lot of medication. Then, so do you move out and pay the rent? Do you stay in, be supportive, even if not financially, emotionally? So sometimes what I feel is that these timelines that people put on them usually also bring a lot of pressure. Right. That by 25, I should have moved out of home. By 30, I should have bought my first car. By 35, I should have bought my own home. By 40, I've retired. And by 45, I'm on an island somewhere. Sometimes those things put pressure on people, so it affects their relationships that they have as well. It may work for your friend. You may go to school with somebody, and by 24, they have moved out, they're living their life, and nobody expects anything from them. And then you, by 28, you're still needed to carry some people. And I think it would be, as much as you would draw the lines and put boundaries, I think it would be a bit irresponsible to just say, those are not my kids, those are my parents' kids. Because eventually, Willis, you'll never be well until the people around you are well. If you are the only person who is well, I'm telling you, they'll come for your life. And not like they'll kill you, but you'll be supporting them the rest of your life. You will be supporting them. They'll be your brothers and sisters who were broke. So, well, you moved out, you go out, then here are your siblings coming into your house. So the thing that you avoided on the other side would still come in. I think it's just a thing of getting back to the place of communicating and saying, okay, I will help you to this degree at this particular point, because this is also what I want to do. I want to go back to school, or I just want to buy my own stuff in my house. I want to grow myself. I want to do this kind of things. And I can only help you for this period. So you don't feel that your parents are on your case and they don't feel that you're being irresponsible. One thing I need to mention, and Roberta, very interestingly, I have this discussion with a lot of people in their 20s. I asked them, why is everybody fighting to live on their own? It's a whole conversation that one time I'll have. Because when people go abroad, they share houses. They will share rents and stuff so that they can save money, they can invest, they can build themselves. When we are here, so I'm earning 30K. I look for a house. I'll be paying like 15,000. How much expendable income do I have? Then I have another sibling or another friend or everybody is paying their rent. So we all are struggling. Yet we could come together and take a house of 20K for a while and say for the next 3 years or 2 years, let's stay together, share the rents, save some money and build ourselves. Right. I don't know what this thing is about I am on my own. Yeah. Sometimes from a financial perspective, it also doesn't make too much sense. So I understand her, the responsibilities that may have been put on her, she may feel like, well, she got worn out. But it's just a negotiation that she needs to make based on circumstances. If the parents are well able and capable and something, negotiate your way out, but don't let it be out of anger. Maybe what she actually needs is a break from what I see. Yeah. Maybe what she actually needs is a break. Like, okay, I've been there for my siblings, I've been there for my parents, I've been doing these chores, but it's just something you can get back and say, look, I feel that I've been doing this and I need to transition to the next stage of my life. So I would love to be given that opportunity to do that. They just need to negotiate.
All right. Jana tulifinya Ibra sana kwa kona overrun. Leo nataka tusimamia hapo. However, Ibra amesema show haiwezi isha kabla asikie sauti ya Roberta tena. So, Bobby, final comments on this issue.
I'd say that, let me just emphasize on something CJ said.
Right.
You'd listen to us, you'd sit and listen to us and think, we're speaking from a space of you have it all made. Right. You know, you grew up well, you have nice things. But you have to understand that for you to have that kind of wisdom and knowledge about something, it's because we've probably been through it or we've probably gone through it. So we're speaking from things that it's not in utopia where parents talk to their children. It's not a special land with milk and honey where kids can tell their parents what they think about, or you guys can reach a compromise and listen to each other, or you can say you're sorry. Ni hapa tu earth yenye sisi tuko, yenye sisi wote tuko. Na hizi relationships ni sisi tu tuko nazo. So, whether as a parent or as a kid, you might not understand things in the point that you're at because, like CJ said, it's probably situational. Even if you've been able to see the patterns and nini, the older you grow, someone said past 25 is when your frontal lobe glows and then your mind opens up and now you start to see things as they are. And I'd say be very patient with yourself and just try to be an honorable human being according to yourself. When you do this, you learn kindness, communication, you learn thoughtfulness, grace, patience. You're able to accord all these things to yourself. And then you're able to extend them to your parents, to your lovers. Even when you see your parent, sometimes your parent could snap at you, but how do you handle it? Do you now nyamaziana? Because it's your responsibility, both of you as grown-ups, to be able to say, yo, I didn't like how you spoke to me. Can we talk about it? Right. I love you. I miss you. I don't like going all day without hearing from you. You're my mom. Please, let's talk. Ni responsibility nye. Na kuna relationships zingine unaweza sema, sikea na ziende. Na kuna zingine zenye uwezi zitreat hivyo. Really, really look out for the people that you love and if you love someone, always fix things with them. You need a lot of forgiveness to be able to make relationships work. You can't say that when you forgive 10 times this year, Imeisha. You'll have to forgive again and again and again and again, because in the same breath that you forgive them, you forgive yourself as well. You work on things yourself, because ukianza kukaa chini ujiangalie utaona pia wewe vitu ulikuwa unafanya last year maybe huwezi zifanya this year. So accord other people the same grace and understand that we're all on our own journeys and we're all going through our own things, but easy relationships zenye zina work out, like I said, haziko utopia, ni sisi tunazi create hapa. So be the kind of person you want to see in everyone else, whether it's with your 80-year-old dad who has been mean to you for 50 years, or it's with your two-year-old kid who doesn't listen to you. Fix those relationships.
Why are you talking
Work
about
on them. Work on them. Talk to each other. Explain, because kuna kitu nimerealize as a kid ni ngumu kwa na parent wako kama human being. Right. Una feeling ni kai au ni superhero. They're the best. They know everything. They do everything right. Then as you grow up, you start to see, oh, kumbe my mom also just has feelings. Kumbe even her, when her car breaks down, she cries. You know, it's just being able to see someone else as a human being as well and according them that same kindness and grace. So let's work on our relationships, and if they're worth mending, I say go for it. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell you what, I hope that you have picked up and learned something here. Just read something that was very interesting here in Leona. Two things can be true at the same time. Just like Roberta has said, you can't say you did your best. By doing your best, it doesn't mean that your kids' experience doesn't exist. You can have done your best and still been toxic to or abusive to your kids. And most importantly, if you want to raise your children like CJ, where they can speak and stand up for themselves, you also have to be very aware that they can speak and stand up for themselves to you.
Yes.
Willis, this is personal.
Yes.
Ivy quoted Roberta.
And not you.
No, man.
Don't worry.
Me and Ivy have a thing going on.
she honors you as well. All right, guys, thank you so much. Listen, I want to give you a challenge today, something that we've mentioned, and let's do it practically. I like to do this. The fact that you're watching this and you have a relationship that, like Roberta said, is mendable, why don't you whip out your phone, text your mom, text your dad, tell them you're sorry, tell them you like to work out on things, or if you haven't spoken to them in a while, just tell them you love them. It doesn't have to be to work out. Maybe you guys are okay. Just remind them that you love them. If you need to work out on something, set that date. That thing you've been procrastinating, set a date to meet them. Can we have coffee on this day? Or can we do this? Or tell them, I'm sorry, like Roberta said, I don't like being estranged. I don't like kunyamazia sana, going days without talking. Can we talk? I'm sorry. Do your part of reaching out and see how that goes, all right? Mungu awabariki sana. Mend the relationships. God loves you and that will never change. Peace and love.